Hey, what's going on, everybody? Justin here, and I got a little bit of a different setup going on this time. I want to try something a little bit different. Basically, it's me just standing closer to the camera and stuff. Usually, I'm like way back there against the bookshelf, but I don't know. I figured I'd try something a little bit different, see what happens. I don't know. Let me know if you like it down below. I don't know. I feel like most people stand closer than I do, and I always just feel, why am I like so far away? But anyways, all that aside, this is one of my favorite times of the year, at least in regards to bookish things and booktube and whatnot, and it is Nonfiction November. It is a readathon coming up, obviously in the month of November and whatnot, and I will leave a link down below. This is created by Olive over at Book Olive, and she's done this I think for 6 or 7 years now, something like that. And it's just really fun, and if you've been following the channel at all, which actually you might not have, because let me put this little graph, I guess it's not really a graph, I guess 2 percentages right there, because I have a lot of views and not a whole lot of subscribers from the views I'm getting. So let me know down in the comments what I'm doing wrong, why you ain't subscribing. But anyways, as you know, I read a lot of nonfiction. This whole shelf is all my nature books and whatnot, so I read a lot of nonfiction pretty much. I wouldn't say exclusively, but I'd say like 80 to 90% of my reading is nonfiction anyways, but still a lot of fun kind of shining the light on nonfiction, because there are a lot of people that are sort of intimidated by nonfiction and whatnot, stuff like that, but there really isn't a reason to be. I've done a couple of videos on like comedic nonfiction and getting into like different subject matter and whatnot, but anyways, like I said, I'll leave a link down below to the original video where she explains all that kind of stuff in much like more clarity than I will. So anyways, there are 4 kind of like general prompts, kind of ideas to get you thinking about nonfiction, and this year they are, let's see, collection, style, industry, and treatment. And you can be as strict or as vague as you want, kind of like adhering to like those terms and like what they mean to you in your picks or whatever, and you don't even have to follow them if you don't want to either, right? I think the only real rule is read a nonfiction book for Nonfiction November. But let's just go ahead and get started, and we're going to go with the first one, my loosest interpretation of one of the terms, and it's collection. And I have Thor Hansen's Hurricane Lizards and Plastic Squid, the fraught and fascinating biology of climate change. And the way I'm interpreting this as collection is it's going to be a collection of plants and animals in this book that are adapting to climate change. And some of those, as we all know, climate change is really, it's hitting the world pretty hard, much more harder than even even the gloom and doom stuff is not going as deep as it really should. Like, I don't know, maybe it's just me, just because I read so many nature books, and there's just, the outlook is really bleak, really dismal, everything like that. So anyways, a lot of animals are dying off, unfortunately, and going extinct. However, in this book, Thor Hansen is kind of going to shed some light on at least some animals that are doing somewhat well, kind of adapting to climate change, and kind of evolving, and based on the different pressures that are being forced upon them, kind of rising to the challenge, and adapting in really strange ways. And actually, with the term Hurricane Lizards in the title, I read Improbable Destinies here by Jonathan Lozos, and I think I know what Hurricane Lizards is referring to, just because Jonathan Lozos did primary research on some islands in the Caribbean and the Bahamas where a lot of lizard species die off really quickly because hurricanes and the kind of the flood surges are kind of wiping out the lizard populations, and they're kind of having to bounce back in different ways and whatnot. So I thought that was kind of neat. I'm hoping I guessed right with this, but like I said, I'll have to read to find out. And like I said, that's sort of like my loose interpretation of collection, collection of animals adapting to change and whatnot. But anyways, I've read, I think, one other book with Thor Hansen, and which one was it? I think it was Seeds. Over here. Really enjoyed it. And he's actually a pretty famous nature writer now. He's got a book on bees, a couple other books, so plan on reading his entire bibliography at one point, so might as well get his newest one out of the way now. Alright, next up we have Industry. And we have a recent work that just came out, is The Arbornaut, A Life Discovering the Eighth Continent and the Trees Above Us by Meg Lomond. And Meg Lomond, if you don't know her, is known as the real life Lorax. Her whole life is dedicated to preserving forests and trees and things like that. So I'm really pleased to have gotten a copy of this. And like I said, I've read some of her stuff from National Geographic. I want to say she is a National Geographic Explorer in Residence. That's kind of her credentials like way up there. From what I understand is she creates like boardwalks and things like up in forest canopies, like literally like hundreds of feet up in like rainforest and things all over the world, so people can actually get like up close and personal with like the treetops, and like kind of learn more about kind of the diversity and everything kind of going up there. Because before she started doing that, like climbing, like I think she was one of the pioneers of like climbing trees to actually do research. Before that, the entire forestry industry, let's see, I'm getting industry in there. The entire like kind of like field of arbory, you know, like trees and forest management and stuff. They didn't really ever climb trees or anything like that. From what I understand, they basically just like, you know, looked at the ground, like the leaves and stuff on the ground or whatever, and just like whatever they could see, that's how they kind of detailed like how the tree was doing or how the forest overall was doing and stuff. And forestry is kind of like a biggish thing, just because where I live in the middle of nowhere. Just as a reference, I think the population density of my town is 9 people per square mile. We basically live in the middle of the woods, in the middle of nowhere. So forestry is kind of like a big thing. So I think it'd be kind of cool learning about how rainforest ecology kind of, especially obviously with like kind of like the canopies and things like that, really exploded over the past couple of decades. And anyone who's known as the real life Lorax is good in my book. All right, next up we have style. And I was having a hard time, like obviously I could just like pick like some Foley Society books or something for like stylish covers and stuff. But I want a little bit more literal interpretation. So I'm going with a history book with this one, and it's Living by the Sword: Weapons and Material Culture in France and Britain by Kristen Nushel. And I assume this is, since it's about material culture, there's going to be a lot of sort of, you know, how did people with swords, which is going to be primarily the elite of society, you know, it's going to be about their material culture and stuff. So I figured there's going to be some fashion and style of like the Middle Ages in there, which I have read one book a long time ago, literally I think called Fashion in the Middle Ages. So I'm definitely willing to learn more about that, especially if it's dealing with kind of the arms and armor, because like, you know, some of these swords were probably more decoration from what I'm guessing than anything else, kind of just like establishing, you know, I'm an elite dude, I have this like fancy like gilded sword or whatever. But I'm sure there were other swords that were kind of like, you know, fashionable or whatever, stylish but also functional. So I kind of want to learn more about that, and there is some like illustrations and like diagrams and stuff in the books as well. So yeah, hopefully learn a little bit about some medieval warrior style. And lastly, we have treatment, and I am going with a Foley Society book here, and it's sadly, out of all the nature books I've read, I still haven't read, as I flip it upside down, Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. Don't ask me why. You think I would have read that like a long time ago, but I hadn't. And obviously the treatment here is, you know, in the 40s, 50s, and early 60s and stuff. Everyone was treating their crop fields with DDT and organochlorines and things like that. You know, it was kind of considered like the miracle chemical at the time, but you know, obviously based on like Rachel Carson's and others' research, really wasn't. A lot of hidden flaws there, you know, with the thinning of the eggshells and all that kind of like collateral damage that was kind of going on and everything like that. Obviously this is like the Foley Society version, except they just came out with a new one literally like 2 months ago, apparently, of like a different version of Silent Spring from Foley Society. But oh well, it is what it is. So I'm definitely excited just to read it, just because, like, you know, Foley Society editions are just better. Usually I haven't been like disappointed with the quality of a Foley Society book, but I'm also interested in learning the contents. I read another Rachel Carson book, and I don't think I have it right here, but she's also just like a really good prose writer as well. So I'm hoping this kind of is like a good blend of kind of academic, I guess, nonfiction writing, and also like the kind of like the prose that she was sort of like known for before Silent Spring came out. Alright, so those are the 4 books I'm going with the prompts for the Nonfiction November challenge. Probably will read a couple more books if I finish those ones. Definitely get a little bit more nonfiction in there. But those are the ones I need to get through first. And let me know if you are joining Nonfiction November. Leave some comments down below about what you plan on reading. And always remember, whether you're reading nonfiction or not, read victoriously.